everybody. Welcome back to another cruise with Smooth. Heading into work today. So, I came up with a few topic ideas to go over. And it was kind of funny. Last night I went and talked with my buddy Danny on his podcast, I'm No Expert. We talked about a lot of things ranging from politics to not starting out on a topic we had originally planned on talking about. Let me think. Politics, cars, relationships, finance. I might not even be getting all these in there because even when we stopped recording, we were still talking about stuff. So it was an interesting evening. He's going to be doing a little bit of editing because we ended up talking for like an hour and 40 minutes in one stretch and then over 2 hours in the next stretch. So he's breaking it down a little bit into more manageable chunks. Should be uploading this week. He is going to be sending me the linked information so I can share that with you guys so you can hear a little bit of less scripted discussion. Anyway, one of the things that's on the list of stuff that I'd want to talk about that's been kind of sitting there marinating for a little bit is a case for smaller federal government. So, I'm not claiming that I have all the answers on how to do any of this. When I was talking with Danny last night, we talked a lot of things about tax regulation and things like that, ways to improve the current tax code. And I told him, look, this is my opinion. I have no answers as to whether or not this would actually work, but I think that there are definitely ways to improve the United States tax code. And he agreed that there's ways to improve it, but we did kind of disagree a bit on how to do it. But anyway, I think that there's definitely a libertarian case for smaller federal government. Now, I realize that the federal government does do a lot of defense spending, so I don't necessarily know that you would want to have that affected by federal downsizing. But I do think that a lot of the federal regulation, especially when it comes to stuff that just impacts normal people going about their day to day, I think that there's a strong argument for that. I think that there's an argument for that when it comes to taxes as well. If you look at a lot of states, you see what has been called inversion. High tax states end up having businesses and the wealthiest among them leave to states where the tax rates aren't as high for their business or for their personal wealth. There's a school bus in front of me that's going really slow and driving me crazy. But anyway, and up until the Trump presidency, and I'm not making an argument that it was right or wrong or moral or immoral, but up until the Trump presidency, a lot of United States-based businesses had moved a decent-sized portion of their business overseas to avoid a nearly 40% business tax rate. You can't blame them. So, I think that there's and when you have businesses doing stuff like that, I think that there's definitely a case for smaller federal government and smaller taxes. You know, people get insanely worked up over who the president is every 4 years. And as in one of my previous videos, I said basically that with the exception of Obamacare causing my health insurance to go up a little bit, and Trump giving me a little bit more of my paycheck every week, that's been the extent of how much the different president has affected me personally. Well, you could make the argument that George Bush had high gas prices, so I was paying about double for a gallon of gas, which when I was that age, I did not get my first car until I was 22, 23. I owned trucks until then because I make great decisions when it comes to fuel economy. I've just always had a side hustle that requires me to have a truck. So I didn't get a car till I got my first car 9 years ago, and I've been driving for almost 16 years. So I drove several years in just trucks, getting lousy fuel mileage, and believe me, the fuel prices under President Bush were not fun. I remember feeding an SUV that had a 20-some gallon tank, $4 a gallon gas. $4 and change. I spent $85 on a full tank of gas in that thing. But what do you do? So anyway, I think that there's definitely an argument for a smaller federal government, because if the federal government just had less power over citizens in the day-to-day, it's going to matter slightly less in your day-to-day life who's in the White House. Now, you will want a smart man and a man that can stick to his guns when it comes to dealing with foreign policy and the crazy people of the world that are in charge of their own countries and own militaries. But the legislative bodies of the United States, federal government, have given over a lot of their authority to alphabet soup regulatory bodies such as the EPA and other advisory councils. And so that, like, the EPA does not bring a regulatory proposal in front of Congress and it pass or fail to pass. They just regulate. And you can't vote them out. They are unelected. They are career. They have a DC career set up for them. And in my opinion, it's one. If you were to get into DC career life, that is being a member of a regulatory body would probably be the best job, in my opinion, in DC, for the simple fact that you aren't getting media coverage by and large. Your name's not known, and you don't have to fundraise, campaign, or rally. So I think that as far as just what job would be the easiest and best to do and make money at, I think being a regulator, because you could sit in the shadows. I think that the federal government would do very good to snatch away the legislative power from different regulatory agencies. They could come in and, pitch their proposals, why this is or isn't a bad idea. They could have experts in, counterpoint views and things like that. And then Congress would have to vote on different issues. I think that's the way that it should work. I don't think that all these regulatory bodies should have the sheer power that they have. And they do. I also think that the federal government is too powerful for business sake. You have the federal government took over 1/5 of the United States economy when Obamacare passed. Now you could make the argument that they didn't take over anything, that they're not directly involved or have ownership or possession of. It's true. But they instantly upped prices on everything medically overnight. And so they did take control, take the reins and steer it in this direction. So I think that there's definitely an argument to reduce the size and scope of federal government's purview. I think a lot of it should be up to the states. There was actually a call at one point last year to host what's called a convention of states. It's constitutional. It was written in the founding documents, where governors and whatnot come together and they can actually, it's written, I might not be getting this right, but it's written as more or less a emergency act in the event of an overgrown federal government, where the state governors come together and they vote on repealing laws and restraining the federal government. And there was actually a big push for that at one point last year. I don't think anything ever came of it, because you had too many career politicians that were rather comfortable in their seats. So anyway, that's my opinion on reducing the size and scope of the federal government. I think overall it would could improve the economy. You definitely want to be careful about making sure that businesses of all shapes and sizes did not end up taking advantage of less regulatory oversight, or potential for less regulatory oversight. So you would want to make sure that the businesses that were having to work under EPA regulations to dispose of waste or deal with fumes from their manufacturing process, you'd want to make sure that they were still doing that, obviously. But I think some of that power could be shifted down to the state level easily. Well, anyway, that's what I've got. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section. I'd love to hear from you. I would be more than happy to do a show on anything that interests you, answer any questions. Give us a like, rate, comment, subscribe, notification bell, all the things. Thanks for tuning in for another Cruise with Smooth. Y'all be safe.